So let me just, for those of you who've never seen me before, I will tell you a little bit about who I am. I'm an early childhood visiting lecturer at 5 universities in the early childhood education and care physical development module, and also early childhood physical development and PE for initial teacher training and skip programs. Today I'm going to be looking at the sensory systems and primitive reflexes. It's very hard because they're incredibly complex. To try and do it in an hour is going to be a challenge, but what I'm going to do is rather go and sort of tunnel into each one. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to each of those that you can then start to sort of explore yourselves. There are some great links to books that I will ask some of the team at Heart to maybe put in the links in terms of further support if you were interested in knowing more about those. So, as I said, I'm a visiting lecturer. I chair the National Early Years Active Start Partnership, and I work both nationally and nationally in supporting educators who work with children under the age of 7 in understanding more about all of the processes involved in physical development. So in the beginning, there was movement, and that's one of our first senses develop in utero. As we spin around in our mother's amniotic fluid in her womb, we develop something called our vestibular system. As well as that, in utero, we're developing some of our key primitive reflexes, which I'm going to be talking about in a moment. Now, in the womb, the first movements occur. These movements initiate childhood development and communication. And here, if we just think about what communication means in infanthood, well, it's a method of outwardly expressing our experiences and our thoughts. Movement is instrumental in the formation of the brain, and subsequently each repetitive movement strengthens those neural pathways, connecting those axons, those neurons and those synapses that cement communication between the body and the brain. Now, what I'd like you all to do is exercise to help understand what that looks like in practice. So what I'd like you all to do is to cross your arms for me, please. So just fold your arms as if you were waiting at the bus stop or about to get a train or in the staff room, wherever you might be. Now, according to research, the dominant hand will be up and then tucked underneath. Have a look. Where is it, your dominant hand? That's up and tucked underneath. If it isn't, don't worry, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just an anomaly to research. That's all. Now wiggle your fingers, and I'd like you to cross your arms the opposite way. Fabulous. How's that going? Was it easy? Was it tough? Was it challenging? Now wiggle your fingers. Go back your original way, the normal way you do it. And wiggle your fingers the opposite way. And what did you notice? Maybe pop in the chat what that experience was like for you. Was it easy? Did you have to really think about it? Maybe it was something that wasn't challenging at all. Tell me about it in the chat. Feels strange the opposite way. Yeah. So let me explain that last sentence again. Oh, Sam, gets easier the more you practice. Perfect. Each repetitive movement strengthens neural pathways, cementing communication between the body and the brain. Your whole life, you've been crossing your arms one way, normally with the dominant hand on top. And because you've repeated it and repeated it, it has become cemented within the neural architecture of the brain. So that means because that pathway has already been made, you don't need to use any cortical control, any cognitive processing to do it. So you'll just cross your arms without thinking about it. But when we tried it the other way, we had to apply cognitive processing. We had to think about all the cortices within our brain and really focus on that movement skill. Now, our brains can only prioritize in early childhood one physical skill at a time. And the key physical skills that we want children to focus on are speaking, listening, and new physical skills. But remember, in early childhood, it can only manage one. So let's think about that. Let's think about what that means. It means that if we have new physical skills cemented within the architecture of the brain, their brains are going to be free for speaking and listening. But if those children haven't got a lot of physical skills cemented in the neural architecture, it's going to prioritize those physical skills. So that means they're not going to be listening, they're not going to be speaking, because the brain prioritizes physical skills, because in the first 5 years, that's when we learn more physical skills than in the rest of our lives. So it's vital, especially for EAL children, especially for children who may struggle with physical competence, especially children who struggle with language. Physical skills, physical skills. And do you know how many times you will need to cross your arms the opposite way for it to be cemented? It's about 200 times. So that's your homework for tonight. Practice doing that. You could also practice brushing your teeth with the other hand. That's really good for hemispherical development. 200 times and you'll have mastered it. That will be cemented within the brain. So we need to have those physical skills embedded in children's neural architecture. Physical development in infanthood is something called experience expectant learning. Both the body and the brain need it. But moreover, the brain needs and expects this development. It is vital. The brain is calling out for it and the body is calling out for it. So we really want to ensure that children have more and more time to experience those new physical skills and explore that canopy movement experience as they go through life. Now, in the first years of life, more than 1 million new connections are formed every second in a baby's growing brain. The main circuits of the brain, they're already pre-wired, and there are genetics. These are things such as breathing, control of our heartbeat, and our reflexes. But the other basic pathways are rudimentary, and they contain trillions of finer, unprogrammed tentative connections. And that's where you come in providing those environments and those experiences that are going to allow those children to that architecture to be built within their brains. So it talked about reflexes as part of our genetics there, and reflexes exist to keep us safe. Essentially, they represent the nervous system reactions caused by physical stimulation to the body's sensory receptors, which are all over and inside the body. These responses occur without any conscious cortical control, so they're automated. By 18 months, those primitive reflexes will be integrated into the body's sensory system. So by 18 months, we would hope that all of those primitive reflexes are integrated, ready for that infant to then move on to something called postural reflexes, which are more complex physical skills, which control balance, posture, agility, speed, etc. So let's look at some of them in more detail. So retained primitive reflexes. Now, what we're seeing across the board, both nationally and internationally, we're seeing that some children are presenting with what we call retained primitive reflexes. This is when the reflexes haven't been integrated into the body. So retained primitive reflexes, for those children who are past 18 months, they can block efficient use of motor skills, can block binocular vision, block sensory motor integration, and can present as developmental delays. Dr. Sally Goddard-Blythe is one of the leading specialists in primitive reflexes, and her book called The Well-Balanced Child is a must read for all of you. If you've never read that, I highly recommend it. And Sally said, the presence of retained primitive infant reflexes in school-age children as indicators of immaturity in neuromotor function has been associated with underachievement in terms of reading, writing and maths, and been linked to conditions such as dyslexia, developmental coordination disorder, and attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. So what this means is that actually some children, when they start school, may be presenting with these symptoms, and there may be some misdiagnosis here. There might be something where we can revisit those primitive reflexes, help to integrate them into the sensory system, and then the children will move and progress in a normal way without those conditions impacting on their development. And Sally works in her INMP Institute, working with secondary school pupils, working with adults, going back to those primitive reflexes to help integrate them to ensure that those adults can progress forward into life without those conditions. I'm going to show you some of them. So these are, as I said, they're a group of behavioural motor responses which are found in early childhood development. Some of them you'll be familiar with, some of them maybe not. The rooting reflex, when we stroke an infant's cheek, they will turn to the breast or to the bottom. And that's instinctual response. Then we have the sucking reflex. When the roof of the mouth is stimulated, that activates the tongue and the sucking production. Then we have the Moro reflex. This is the startle reflex. If an infant hears a loud noise or something startles them, their legs and their arms spread out and shake. We have the tonic labyrinth reflexes. This controls the front and the back of the body. We have tonic neck. We have two tonic necks. We have the asymmetrical and the symmetrical tonic neck. It's often called the fencing reflex. So a baby's hand will go up, their head will turn, and the arm goes out. And for the symmetrical, it's often the opposite leg is going out to the side. Stepping reflex, when you lift an infant, their legs will pedal. Spinal gallant, when this is essential for travelling through the birth canal. So when the infants are travelling through the birth canal, the spine adjusts to a more wiggly, wiggle shape to enable that baby to manipulate their bodies through the birth canal. And then the palmar, which is the grasping reflex, and the plantar, which is the foot, often called the Babinski reflex. And it's when you stroke a baby's hand, they will grasp, and when you stroke a baby's foot, the toes will turn round. So let's have a look at what this would look like in terms of assessing and supporting children. So the retained Moro reflex often identifies children who are anxious, they have heightened senses, and they have poor spatial awareness. They might be children who cover their ears when there's loud sounds, might be children who are anxious about separation, there might be children who are anxious about trying new things. And what can we do to check that the Moro reflex is still being retained? Well, we can look into their eyes, because often their pupils will be a little bit larger than that of their peers. They will also be hypersensitive to touch. Do you see children who don't like things that are a bit labels on their coats, or they don't like other people holding their hands? They also have motion sickness, and they struggle with directionality, so changing direction in terms of left and right, etc. And how do we support them? Well, one of the activities that we can do is something called single-sided laterality. That's where one side of the body will do the same movement. So, for example, maybe you can do something like this, where your arm and leg comes out to the side and the other side, or maybe they come up and front, or maybe we can hit the leg, the other side. Maybe we can shake one arm and one leg, we can shake it on the other side. We can also curl up into a ball, very, very small, and then stretch out to be very tall. So curling up into a ball and stretch out, that can be done on the floor, or that can be done standing up. The retained tonic labyrinth reflex, this again, as I said, is the front and back of the body. Children can identify as quite clumsy, poor balance. Often you see them walking on toes. I'm seeing more and more toe walkers when I go into nursery and reception. Difficult navigating space, and they have poor eye control. So a way to assess whether the child has got that retained labyrinth reflex is that we can allow our children to lay on their tummies, and they have their hands next to them on their tummies, and can they lift their legs? And they lift their legs and then lift their head. Now, if they can do both of those things, the likelihood is they don't have a retained tonic labyrinth reflex. If they do, then what we can do is help support them introducing these movements. So again, the curling up on the ball, but this time it's on the floor. So tucking up, so it's keeping the bottom on the floor and tucking up our knees and our body, and then stretching out. And then we have Superman raise, a bit like the other one, but this one is with arms out in front. So think about Superman, hands out, laying on our tummies, stretching out, and then walking on different levels and textures. So going up and down steps. Think about barefoot play. So maybe exposure to sand and water without shoes on. Maybe we can make sensory pathways with some shingles, some bark chipping, some pebbles, to allow the children to explore lots of different movements on those different textures. And things like walking up a slide. Those kind of movements are really going to help integrate the tonic labyrinth reflex. Retained spinal gallant reflex. Now, I'm seeing a lot of this one, and this one we often see identifies poor bladder control. So it might be children who are bedwetting, it might be children who have incontinence issues, also very fidgety, and they can often be mislabeled as ADHD. So how do we assess this one? We want to put the pupils on their floor, so think about maybe introducing being cats or dogs or animals, and then while they're there, just say to them, I'm just going to run my thumb along your spine. Is that okay? We're just going to see if you're tickly, and then rub your thumb one side of the spine all the way down to the coccyx. Now, if the infant drops the shoulders or the hips, the likelihood is that the reflex is retained, and then we do it the other side of the spine. Now, what we can do here is ask the children to starfish on the floor, and then keeping their arms and legs on the floor, slowly make snow angels. Maybe when it snows in the winter, we can actually do it in the snow. But snow angels on the floor. The retained tonic labyrinth reflex, this identifies as poor balance, poor head control, clumsy inner ear, impacting on sound and vestibular system, and once again, toe walking. So what we can do here, very similar to the other two, but instead of the Superman arms out, we want Superman in front, we want arms out, and we want that skydiving position on our tummies, arms and legs up, and then we move our hands to our side, and then can we hold that for 10 seconds? So think about ways that you could do that. Maybe we can think about being Superman. We can say that we're flying through the sky, and then see if they can do that. And we support that by doing what's called a dish shape. So laying on the floor, lifting up on our backs, lifting up our arms and legs, and then we bring our hands out to the side and then bring our hands down to us. So just making like what we call a dish, part of our gymnastics provision. So they're on their back and their head's there and their legs are there. So this will help integrate the tonic labyrinth. The asymmetric tonic neck reflex, this is a fencing reflex. This can often identify with poor hand and eye coordination. This is very much to do with midline development, tracking, copying from a board, poor handwriting, struggling with jigsaws. And what we can do, first of all, is ask the children to stand, and then we draw a figure of 8 in front of them, seeing if they can keep their head still and copy with just their eyes. And then we ask the children to stand out, arms out in front, close their eyes, and then the adults, with permission and consent from the child, carefully hold their head and turn their head to the side, and then carefully turn their head to the other side. And the arms should stay in that position rather than drop the shoulder. And what we can do to support this one is face down on a mat, so keeping the forehead on a mat. And then we want to think about robot arm and leg out to the side. So something like this, arm and leg, like this, and then swapping over like this, keeping that forehead on the floor. And then we repeat that. This is the last one, because there are lots more, but as I say, we haven't got time. We're just touching on some of the key ones that I'm seeing. The retained sucking and rooting reflex often identify frothy mouth, dribblers, tongue sits at the front of the mouth, dental problems, fussy eaters, may have a lisp, speech and language problems. Normally, this is one of the first to be integrated, the sucking and rooting. So by about 4 months, that should be integrated into the sensory, into the body. What we'll see with assessing is we might see overbite or underbite, might see dribbling, and observe the children in meal times. And what we can do to support them is chewing toys, tongue exercises. Maybe we can think of action rhymes where the tongue comes out of the mouth or moves around. For example, I'd just like you to make a noise with me. Can you make it like a horsey noise? Think about where the tongue is. Should feel it at the top of the mouth. So we're stimulating the roof of the mouth to override that sucking reflex. Making mouth sounds, as I say, any kind of mouth sound, lots of action songs will help support that. And playing wind instruments, maybe you have a kazoo, maybe you have harmonicas, blowing bubbles, lots of ways that we can support the development of the sucking and rooting reflex. So as I said, we learn more physical skills in the first 5 years than at any other time in our lives. Out of movement comes speech, and from speech comes thinking. This is from Dorothy Marlin from the Pickler Association. Touch. I'm going to talk about touch. We know about the sensory systems: touch, taste, smell, sight, and sound. So I'm going to be touching on all of those very briefly. The skin contains sensory receptors classically described as coding for touch: temperature, pain, itch, and a fifth modality, pleasant touch. Infants who are deprived of touch or avoid it are at higher risk for sensory emotional processing problems. And the avoidance of social touch in infancy is a predictor of autism spectrum disorder in older children. Lack of touch impacts the sensory scaffold on which the perceptual distinction between self and other is built, further impacting on social responses and abilities throughout development. And this is from Dr. Francis McGlone. His work is revolutionary in terms of touch and connection. Positive contingent touch from educators has been demonstrated to increase on-task behaviour and reduce disruptive behaviour in young children. Given the importance of effective social touch for an infant's formation of secure attachment and children's subsequent cognitive and linguistic development and emotional regulation, optimising their touch environment is a fundamental right that will have far-reaching effects if denied to them. Touch enhances the ability to adjust and become engaged in independent and creative social connection. Now, touch is a really tricky one in terms of provision because of safeguarding. How much touch is okay? How much touch is too much? When is it right to do it? When is it not? So what do we do about that? Well, we know that children need touch. So we have to have a staff meeting, we have to have senior leadership meetings, and we have to talk about what touch is okay. Because children need you to hold their hands. Maybe we can sing round and round the garden. Maybe we can introduce peer-to-peer massage. Maybe we can think of introducing rough and tumble play. All of this touch is really vital for young children. So have a think about where touch is in terms of your policy within your setting in your school. Where does touch appear, and how can we support positive touch thinking and being conscious about safeguarding? So I just want you to think about this. We haven't got time with just an hour, but after this, I want you to, as I say, think about ways to sensitively introduce touch into your provision. Now, and what they've done in some nursery and reception settings I've been working in is that they've introduced peer-to-peer massage, where we make like fingertips, like raindrops, and then we have a little bit of up and down, we have rubbing, we have those fingertips, we have gentle patting, ways to introduce peer-to-peer massage. Again, this is about consent. And we know that the more we introduce touch effectively and sensitively, the more research tells us that it prepares children to understand more about consent, what they like happening to their bodies and what they don't like. So being able to verbalise, no, I don't like that, or yes, please continue. So now we're going to do a little activity ourselves. We're going to do some massage, some self-massage. So we're going to do a little activity. I'll take my glasses off, where we're going to stimulate the senses. We're going to think about our proprioceptive system, and we're going to do it in terms of telling a story about going out into the rain. So let's pretend we're going out and it's raining and it's pouring. Put your welly boots on, everybody. Put your coats on. Put your hats on. Lovely. Have you put them on? Do they do up underneath your chin? Very nice. Let's put everything on. Have you got waterproof trousers? Touch your legs as well. Wonderful. Should we go outside? Open the door. Let's go outside. Oh, I can feel the pitter-patter of the raindrops. Pitter-patter, pitter-patter. It's raining, it's pouring. Pitter-patter, pitter-patter. All the way across your body, down your arms. Can you feel the rain? Oh, it's going all the way down to my tummies, onto my back, down my legs, all the way to my toes. Pitter-patter, pitter-patter, pitter-patter. Oh no, the rain is getting heavier. Oh, look, it's tap, 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 tap. It's falling all over me. I'm getting wet. Are you getting wet? Tap, 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 all across your body, all the way down to your toes. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, it's raining so hard. I think we'd better go and shake the water. Okay, let's squeeze the water out of our hat. Squeeze it. Oh, we're making puddles. Squeeze it out of your jackets and your coats. Squeeze it. Oh, can you see it all dripping? Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Shake that water out. Squeeze your body. Squeeze everywhere. Squeeze the legs. Can you squeeze the water out of those trousers? Oh, it's filling up my welly boots. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Tip your welly boots out. One puddle and the other one. One puddle. Oh, I'm feeling a little bit cold now. Are you? Oh, let's dry ourselves with our towel. Oh, yes. Pat yourselves dry. Pat, pat, pat. All around your body. Pat, pat, pat. All those legs. Don't forget your toes because your welly boots aren't on anymore. Lovely. Ah, wrap yourselves up in the towel and let's rub. Rub your head, rub your neck, dry yourself. Oh, I'm getting lovely and warm now. Give yourselves a good rub all over your body. Lovely. And how do we feel? So that's our little self-massage to help self-regulate, to help think about our proprioceptive system, help thinking about those sensory receptors. So hopefully you're all feeling regulated. So this is again from Professor Francis McGlone. As human primates, we are wired for touch, whether we like it or not. Some of us might not like it, but our brains and our bodies are wired for touch. Water, swimming, water babies, all of those activities. Being in water is really good for developing our vestibular and our proprioceptive sense as the water is all around us. It's triggering all of those sensory receptors. So as a researcher, it's really important for me to understand relevant literature and important information in terms of physical development. And I think it's really vital for you as educators as well, because sometimes we need to find that permission to be able to prioritise physical development. And here we have our permission. So we know that promoting the development of health and well-being across the lifespan involves navigating a complex and intertwined labyrinth of biological, social and environmental factors that change over time. We know that when we were children, our experiences of movement may have been very different to those children with whom we're working. We also know that children who moved more throughout very early childhood presented higher neurodevelopment scores at 4 years old than their peers. We also know that early experiences in children's lives are associated with important later in life outcomes like physical and mental well-being and educational attainment. And interestingly, there's a correlation between sufficiently rich physical play. So this is when children are really physically active, but it's initiated by them in their experiences in early childhood and the adult personality trait of attachment. And sound. Children exposed to musical experiences from a young age show stronger neural connections for language and auditory processing. Sound processing is one of the most complex things we can ask of our bodies. When we're outside and we can hear traffic, we can hear birds, we can hear other children speaking, your brain is having to really work hard to be able to tune in on those sounds. Sound is deeply linked to movement. It might be that music, rhythm and sound in your provision, well, it supports gross motor coordination, fine motor timing, action, songs, clapping, and body awareness and timing, helping children organise their actions in time and space. Sound is central to how young children communicate, connect and make sense of the world. By offering a sound-rich environment full of music, voice, natural sounds and playful noise making, we nurture their ability to listen, learn, move and express themselves with confidence. We have bonfire nights and fireworks coming up in November. This is a really great time when I start to think about language. So I'll ask children to think about different sounds that fireworks make. Maybe whiz, zoom, crackle, crackle, crackle. Really helping them to think about using their tongue and their mouths to make those sounds. This is a really great time to think about those movements as well. So we can make the sound and then they can show you what that looks like. So really use that time to help support language development. And there's a fabulous piece of music by Stravinksy. Maybe we can pop that in the chat, called Fireworks. So definitely draw on that to help support that activity and help children listen to all the beautiful, complex changes in tempo and timbre in that beautiful piece of music. Rhythmic entrainment. Now, scientists have noted that babies as young as 2 months show rhythm discrimination. At 7 months, they can infer an underlying beat. And at 9 months, they can notice timing discrepancies. And this is all because of that time spent in utero, where they can hear the repetitive sound of their mother's heartbeat. Now, rhythmic entrainment, it's when our internal body rhythms react to the
Imagine bringing your side
sound, the external sound of music. So what we can do here, we can recognize it maybe when we're in the car and we hear a song, we tap our fingers on the steering wheel. That's rhythmic entrainment. Maybe you're listening to music, watching a film, and your foot starts tapping. That's rhythmic entrainment. Now, rhythmic entrainment, as I said, it causes that emotional reaction, and it really helps activate the reward system that modulates memory formation. The best songs to introduce to children is a song that Brunel University, their Sound and Vision Innovation Department, found that this one piece of music has higher levels of rhythmic entrainment than any other piece of music. And it's Superstition by Stevie Wonder. So have a listen to that. And what I'd like you to do, I'd like to play it for yourself first. So play that music. And I'd like you to close your eyes and think about where you can feel the music coming from. Is it in your belly? Is it in your knees? Is it in your shoulders? Is it in your head? Is it in your fingertips? And then I want you to think about when you play it again, is it the same? Repeat it. And then next time, I want you to play that for the children in your care. I want you to play that piece of music and just observe what happens. According to research, those children will be wiggling, bopping, swaying, reacting to the sound of music. And I've seen it happen a lot, so give it a try. Let's think about sight. Now, early vision develops rapidly and is profoundly shaped by movement, environment, and interactions with others. Giving young children opportunities to explore visually and physically without overstimulation supports healthy brain and motor development. Vision is closely tied to physical development, especially reaching, crawling, and walking, and visual input guides posture and balance. Movement supports vision just as much as vision supports movement. And self-initiated locomotion enhances spatial awareness and visual motor integration. By 12 months, most babies have nearly adult-level visual acuity and are using vision to support mobility and exploration. 8 senses. So we've touched on our sight, our sound. We haven't done smell yet or taste, but we're now going to look at vestibular, proprioceptive, and interoceptive. So these are our body movement-related senses. Really strongly connected to the way our bodies move and respond. And I want to just explain what they are, because some of you might be familiar with them, some of you not. So our vestibular system is our inbuilt spirit level. It what tells us when we're on a boat, when we're starting to feel a bit nauseous. It tells us how to move on different terrains. It tells us when we're laying upside down, kicking our legs up in the air. You might remember the first time that you go onto a roundabout or spin around as an adult, when you start to feel nauseous. For us as children, they can spin for up to 10 seconds, some children even longer. And then our proprioceptive system is our intuition. It's knowing where we are in space. So how tall we are when we stretch up, how wide we are when we stretch out. And it's when the sensory receptors in our joints, in our ligaments and our cartilage are stretched and released, and that causes these sensory receptors. You will do it, you will use your proprioceptive system when you pick up maybe a plastic cup full of water and you can't squeeze it too hard or the water will come out. You'll use it when you go to sit down on a chair. Has anybody sat down on a chair thinking it's an adult's but it's a child's? That's your proprioceptive system that was preparing your body to sit at a certain height. If you're driving your car, maybe you go under a barrier, but you duck, even though you're in your car. That's your proprioceptive sense. And then our interoceptive sense is responsible for the way our body feels. So whether we're hungry, whether we need to go to the toilet, whether we're cold, whether we're hot, if we clench our fists when we're angry, when we have goosebumps, all of those feelings develop our interoceptive sense. So what I've done is I've put together a list of all of those movements that support the vestibular, the proprioceptive and the interoceptive. And what I want you to do now, I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to look at all of those movements. And if you've got other people in the room with you, I want you to think about what is missing from your current provision. What do you not have in terms of all of these movements? Or what do you not offer or is available to young children? Emotional movement is when we respond to, maybe you put some music on and it's happy music. Maybe you say to the children, oh, are you feeling cross today? How does that make you want to move? Something along those lines. Rough and tumble is often one I see missing because it's a really hard one to offer, thinking about safeguarding and think about appropriate activities in early years. But I know those settings that I work with who have introduced it have seen huge benefits. So what they've often done is they've popped some mats down in one corner of the space. They've talked about what that area is going to be for wrestling and rolling around with each other. But stop either with verbally or with a hand, or you can have a red scarf that the child can shake or reach if they don't want to play that game anymore, and then they can leave that space. But there are some children that will really benefit from that rough and tumble play. So the olfactory sense, or our sense of smell, plays a vital role in young children's sensory, emotional and cognitive development. While often overlooked in early learning environments, stimulating this powerful sense can support memory, language, emotional regulation and sensory integration. We know that in terms of memory, the olfactory sense, which our memory is developed in our hippocampus, is one of the key ones. It might be when you think about your first experience, maybe it was the smell of something. And smells can take us back somewhere, can't it? The cut grass of the lawn, the smell of petrol, the smell of rubber, whatever it is, whatever that smell is, it can take us straight back to that moment. The sense of smell is closely linked to the limbic system, the part of the brain that's responsible for emotion and memory. So these are the kind of things that we can think about. We can think about exposing children to some lavender or chamomile, maybe just popped in some Play-Doh or in some tough trays. Peppermint and citrus can improve alertness. Use peppermint very minimally because it's very strong. We can have a smell box with natural senses. What's great to use is old herb and spice containers. Just secure the lid on and have those available as a heuristic sensory box. We can use things like lemons and oranges for children to smell as well. Herbs and spices, explore flowers, fruits and leaves during outdoor play. Just always do your research when using flowers because there are some flowers that are toxic, so just be really careful. We can add scent to art materials, and we can think about involving children in cooking and food preparation. So again, these really help to support the sense of smell. And early exposure to a variety of tastes and textures lays the foundation for a balanced diet and a positive relationship with food. Babies are born with an innate preference for sweet tastes, but taste preferences are highly adaptable in the first years of life. Repeated low exposure to new tastes is key, and research shows it can take up to 10 or 15 exposures for a child to accept that new food. So don't be put off when they first start to reject that new food. Keep introducing it gradually, positively. The gustatory sense is linked to our oral motor skills, so chewing, swallowing, and tongue movements, all of which are important for speech development and safe eating. We want to create a safe and fun taste test table with small samples of fruit, vegetable, herbs, and dips. We want to think about taste-themed songs, 5 little peas in a pea pod pressed. We want to explore cooking and baking together. We want to ensure children have exposure to lots of textures, crunchy, soft, juicy, warm, cold, licking, sucking. We want to talk about flavours and sensations. Is it sharp, smooth, zesty, bland? We want to think about making fruit and vegetable smoothie ice lollies as well. This is really important in introducing the rooting and the sucking reflex. So what's next? Well, as I said, this was a whistle-stop tour of the sensory systems and the primitive reflexes. So what I want you to do is review your learning environment, thinking about those senses that we've covered. And I want you to share this information with families on the importance of triggering those senses and supporting the senses, and how movement is vital from birth. We want to ensure that babies have time on their backs to explore, time free of those restrained devices, and making sure they've got opportunities to be outside as well. We want to include all senses within our provision. What have you got for smell? Have you got potion making? We want to introduce more movement and reduce the chairs in our settings. We know that in early years, we don't need chairs at the stations. We can stand up and use Play-Doh. We can stand up and mark make. We can stand up and cut. We can stand up and build. We want to engage children in the growing, harvesting and cooking of ingredients. We want to listen to music and make music together. Really think about instruments that blow, really good for the mouth in terms of speech and language. We want to include more dynamic movement. If you've noticed that jumping is missing, find ways to introduce that. So we want to promote child massage, if we can, thinking about where touch is in your provision. How can you support that in a safe way? We want to know that children, when they're outdoors, they're going to be more active than when they're indoors. We certainly want to reduce exposure to digital technology and screens. We want to think about our physical activity policy. Maybe we've got a risk assessment policy, but what about a physical activity policy? Let's write our physical activity policy. If you are interested, I have a draft version on my website under learning resources. So please, you can take that draft version. It's a template in Word, so you can adapt it for your learning environment. And sing more songs. Sing more songs together. Lots of action rhymes and nursery rhymes together. And this is my last slide, the last presentation, part of the presentation. This is how I end all of my presentations, because this really matters. In early childhood, these little people imitate us. Whether you realise it or not, they think you're wonderful, they think you're precious. And that's a position of responsibility, but also it's an absolute privilege to know that you are the architects of who these little children are going to become. What a position of privilege that is. And I want you to reflect, are you worthy of that imitation? I have a QR code here for further resources. These are free music activities download resource. This is available on my website. And this will give you links to lots of different music and thinking about activities that you can associate with those songs and tracks. Scheme of work I developed following my research at the Centre for Research in Early Childhood. It's for nursery and reception children, and it's a physical development scheme of work that lasts a year. Next slide, please. And that's the link to that. If you're interested, sadly, that one's not free. It's a year's worth of work. And here I am on social media, and there's my website. There's lots of free resources on my website, so do have a little checkout of everything that's there. There's also some free lesson plans if you're looking at implementing an adult-directed movement activity, as well as, of course, the physical play and free initiated play that children need for their own learning and development. So that's the screen share finished. Over to questions.